What happens when two of the Middle East's most powerful rivals spend decades preparing for a confrontation but never actually fight each other directly? For years, Iran and Israel have been locked in one of the most dangerous rivalries in modern geopolitics. A conflict fueled by ideology, power, nuclear fears, and regional influence. But this story is bigger than just two countries. It stretches across the Middle East, involving militant groups, secret operations, global superpowers, and the ever-present shadow of nuclear weapons. And standing closely beside Israel is one of the world's most powerful nations, the United States. So how did we get here? Why do Iran and Israel see each other as enemies? And how did the United States become deeply involved in this conflict? To understand the present, we have to go back in time. Before 1979, Iran and Israel were not enemies. In fact, under Iran's monarchy, the two countries had relatively friendly relations. Trade existed, intelligence agencies cooperated, and both governments shared strategic interests in the region. But everything changed with the Iranian Revolution. When Iran's monarchy was overthrown, a new Islamic government came to power. The revolutionary leadership openly opposed Israel's existence and strongly criticized Western influence in the Middle East. Israel, in turn, began to view Iran as a growing strategic threat. From that moment onward, tensions between the two countries would define a new chapter of Middle Eastern politics. Not a traditional war, but something far more complicated. For decades, Iran and Israel rarely fought each other directly. Instead, the conflict unfolded through proxy warfare, supporting different groups across the region. Iran built alliances with powerful organizations such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. These groups have often clashed with Israel, creating a network of conflicts that stretch across borders. From Israel's perspective, these groups represent Iran's expanding influence. From Iran's perspective, they are part of a broader resistance against Israel. The result? A shadow war spreading across multiple countries. Missile attacks, drone strikes, cyber warfare, covert operations. A conflict that rarely appears on official battlefields, but never truly disappears. One of the most serious points of tension between Iran and Israel revolves around nuclear technology. Iran insists its nuclear program is for peaceful energy and scientific research. But Israel and several Western countries fear something very different. They believe Iran could eventually develop nuclear weapons. To prevent this, world powers negotiated a major agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, often called the Iran Nuclear Deal. The agreement placed limits on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for lifting economic sanctions. However, when the United States withdrew from the deal in 2018, tensions quickly rose again. Iran resumed expanding parts of its nuclear program. Israel warned that a nuclear-armed Iran would be an existential threat, and the geopolitical temperature continued to rise. For years, the conflict remained indirect, but in recent years, things began to escalate. Israel launched strikes against Iranian military targets and weapons shipments across the region. Iran responded through allies and missile capabilities. Slowly, the shadow war started becoming more visible. Drone attacks, cyber operations, and targeted assassinations of scientists and military officials made headlines. Each side accused the other of aggression. Each strike increased the risk of retaliation. The possibility of direct war, once considered unlikely, began to feel closer than ever. The Iran-Israel conflict is not just a regional issue. It sits at the center of global geopolitics. Major powers watch the situation carefully. Countries like Russia and China maintain strategic relationships with Iran. Meanwhile, Israel has long been one of the closest allies of the United States. This creates a complicated global chessboard. Every move in the region can influence energy markets, security alliances, and international diplomacy. Even the world's oil supply can be affected by rising tensions in the Middle East. In other words, when Iran and Israel clash, the entire world pays attention. The United States has played a central role in this story. For decades, Washington has supported Israel politically, economically, and militarily. This alliance is based on shared strategic interests, democratic ties, and long-standing diplomatic cooperation. Because of this relationship, the United States often supports Israel's security concerns. At the same time, American policymakers have tried to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons and expanding military influence across the region. This balancing act, supporting Israel while trying to manage tensions with Iran, has shaped U.S. foreign policy for decades. But it has also placed the United States directly in the middle of one of the world's most dangerous rivalries. Behind every geopolitical headline are real human lives. Families displaced by violence, communities living under the threat of missiles and airstrikes, children growing up surrounded by conflict and uncertainty. While political leaders debate strategy and security, ordinary people often bear the heaviest burden. War is never just about territory or power. It is about people. And for many across the Middle East, peace remains an urgent and deeply personal hope. So what happens next? The future of the Iran-Israel rivalry remains uncertain. Diplomatic negotiations could reduce tensions. International pressure could revive nuclear agreements. Or escalating military actions could push the region closer to a larger confrontation. Experts warn that a direct war between Iran and Israel could destabilize the entire Middle East. And with global powers involved, the consequences could reach far beyond the region. The story of Iran and Israel is not just about two nations. It is a story about history, ideology, power, and the complex web of alliances that shape our world. A rivalry decades in the making. A conflict that has evolved from shadows to headlines. And a future that remains uncertain. The real question is not just how this conflict began, but whether the world can prevent it from becoming something far more dangerous. Because in geopolitics, as in history, today's tensions often shape tomorrow's world. Now you know. Like, comment, and subscribe.